Bring home Smile 2 on digital now. In this terrifying thriller, an unknown force has latched on to global pop star Sky Riley as reality and her nightmares collide. Buy the film critics are calling the scariest movie of the year by a mile, and get over 40 minutes of bone-chilling extras, including deleted scenes and more. Available at participating retailers. Rated R from Paramount Pictures.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the...
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your...
windshield wipers. eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying... just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
Slashers, huh? What's your favorite scary movie?
Not that one.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking a glass of mommy's juice. We're talking, what, did you think at the end of the road I was going to cut off your head and snuggle fuck it? And we're talking, here we fucking go. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking, have you ever seen the movie Never Been Kissed?
Oh, I love it.
I do too. Everyone, we are discussing Creep 2 because we're so excited about the prequel sequel TV series, The Creep Tapes, premiering this week.
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, we're recording this in advance, so we have no idea truly where that series falls. I think it is going to fall in between these two films, if we're being honest.
Well, Joe, I've actually seen the first 3 episodes of the show, so I know exactly what it is. Well, I'm sorry, 3 of 6 episodes. And much like this movie, they are short episodes. We're looking at 30-minute episodes for that show.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I mean, I'm happy to play in this sandbox with Peachfuzz.
Very much so. I love these movies. And everyone, of course, please, as Joe reminded me last week, we do have an episode on the first Creep. So please, if you don't know what that is, please go back and watch Creep and listen to that episode and then come back and listen to this.
There we go.
But, okay, wait. I want to bring in our guest who's waiting in the wings, because even though this is a, 80-minute movie, I feel like there's a lot to talk about. So
much.
Everyone, she is the co-host of the Queer Quadrant, a podcast that explores why your favorite 4-quadrant blockbusters are maybe not as straight as you think they are. You may also remember her from our episode on Basic Instinct from back in 2022. Please welcome back Brooke Solomon.
Hello. We're talking, what would Francis Ford Coppola do?
We're talking full frontal male nudity.
Oh boy.
Was not expecting that, because they played with it in the first movie.
Yes.
Yep.
And I was not prepared.
No.
Let me tell you.
I have a deep respect for Mark Duplass, because I couldn't tell you what else he's gone full frontal in, but I know this is not the only thing he has gone full frontal in. So honestly, respect.
Yeah, was it that HBO show that he did for like a couple of seasons?
Yeah, Togetherness. Because I remember,
that sounds about right.
That's a really good. Everyone
it's a good show, folks.
Yeah, it's 2 seasons. Amanda Peet, Melanie Linsky, and then Duplass. That's real good. Mm-hmm. But okay, Brooke. So a little birdie told me, and that little birdie was Joe, that you had never seen either of these films before coming onto this episode.
No, for some reason, these just like flew under my radar. Although the second that I started telling people, oh, I just watched this or I'm planning to watch this, there's way more fans than I expected out there. I mean, clearly it's birthed the whole franchise, but I do really like found footage. I like what can be done with found footage.
Mm-hmm.
The first film reminded me of like a Tim Robinson sketch in the worst way.
I think you should leave.
Yes, yeah. Where it's so uncomfortable, the way that it makes you sit in it. And Creep 2, which I definitely preferred, is more of like traditional horror, which I liked.
Actually, well, so Brooke, though, a question for you.
Yes.
Did you know that Mark Duplass's character was a serial killer before you started watching Creep?
No.
Okay, good. Because I always forget that it's not a twist, but it's a reveal in the later part of the film that he actually is a serial killer. So when I'm selling it to people, I'm like, oh yeah, it's this really good found footage movie about a guy who goes to like hang out with a serial killer. I was like, oh wait, that's a spoiler.
Actually, I think that it's pretty obvious from the beginning of the first film that he's essentially lying about everything. So I never bought his kind of like awkward, I just want a friend act. I was like, there's obviously something more duplicitous going on here, but the reveal of all the tapes at the end of the first movie did get me where I was like, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, which that is what the Creep tapes is doing. Like each episode is basically a different tape, a different victim, a different name of the episode. But yeah, I really wish I would have seen the first Creep in like a festival setting, because I feel like if I was watching it and I was like, okay, it's a Duplass brother and it's like this kind of like found footage like mumblecore movie, because the director Patrick Bryce doesn't consider these films horror movies. But either way, like that, whatever.
It's fine. I'm fine.
But I think it would be really fun to be watching this movie that you think, okay, it's a Duplass brother, it's mumblecore, and then oh my god, it's a serial killer movie. Like I think that would be a really fun way to view it. But I do feel, I mean, you know what? Creep is 10 years old now, so the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. If he doesn't consider them horror, though, how on earth would you classify this?
So
are we doing thrillers? Is that what we're doing?
Okay, so I have some insight onto that I'll go into, but basically, like, he says he doesn't view it as a horror movie, and this is his quote. I know it's going to be marketed that way, and that's fine, and I know a lot of horror fans like it, and that's great. But when I think of a horror movie, I think about classic horror films. I think it's an experimental film. That's our mindset going into them. They feel like weird art movies that are playing with genre, and that genre just happens to be horror. But he views it as closer to a romantic comedy than a horror film.
Well,
I mean,
I
sure.
do like that.
Well, but then he uses Michael Haneke's Funny Games and Cachet as example, like comparable examples.
Okay, that's interesting, actually.
Well, I mean, because I guess we've covered Funny Games, but like I don't know, do we view Funny Games as a horror film? And I
yes,
do,
yes,
but,
yes.
But I guess it's the thing where it's like, I mean, I get it, you know, he's playing with
traditional
genres. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think if you say, I'm playing in the sandbox, or I'm like pulling from these elements of this established genre, I'm like, well, aren't you then just making a movie with that genre? I mean, I think we can definitely see that there's intersections with other genres, such as a romantic comedy. I think that's where some of the subversiveness and the interesting elements of these two films come from.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, you're talking about a movie about a man who kills people and like actively lures them on the internet to his house for the purposes of murder and filming it. Like, that is a horror film.
I guess, okay, I mean, I'm just like thinking out loud here now. Okay, so let's say you had a movie that was actually a romantic comedy, like a traditional romantic comedy, not playing in the sandbox of romantic comedy. But one half of the couple is a serial killer. So does it make it horror by design just because you have a serial killer in the role, even though the movie itself is a romantic comedy?
You're talking about the first 30 minutes of Fresh.
Yes.
There you go, actually.
I think that it really does depend on what else you're using,
right?
Like aside from plot. Let's think about tone. Let's think about pacing. Let's think about kind of lighting and the way that these characters are set up. Like, these films are set up like horror films.
Yeah, the technical elements, right?
Yes, like romantic comedies or even experimental films. And I wouldn't necessarily consider found footage experimental anymore.
Not anymore.
Maybe in 2014.
No. Yeah.
Maybe. But like, Blair Witch was a long time ago, guys.
Yeah, it's 15 years after Blair Witch.
Yeah, and that's like what, 6 years, 7 years after Paranormal Activity?
Yes. Yeah. It's now just a genre.
Truly.
But this is also one, I guess, a relative, I'm going to say early example, but even though I know that people from comedy have gone into horror before, but like, you know, of like people, you know, kind of for comedy doing something that's more genre adjacent, you know, like going into like David Gordon Green and fucking Danny McBride doing Halloween films.
Right.
Well, like Jordan Peele said, it's all about timing.
Exactly. And
all
Jordan
about
Peele's
timing.
another example.
Yeah. And the timing is so perfect in these movies, and I think that's what keeps you gripped to something that could feel mumblecore in a negative sense, and instead you're like, no, I'm in it because it's timed out so perfectly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay, so Brooke, I'm really glad that you said that you like this one more, because I actually do like this one more as well. Because I think this is kind of a different beast than the first movie. And so I was really interested in figuring out how Bryce and Duplass came up with this idea. And I actually found quite a bit of information. So here we go. So a quick refresher on how that first Creep film came to be, though. So like Duplass and Bryce met when Bryce's wife started babysitting for Duplass's children. And at the time, Bryce was a recent transplant to Los Angeles and a graduate student at Cal Arts' filmmaking program with the ultimate goal of making documentaries. Eventually, Bryce and Duplass started hanging out as friends, not just babysitting buddies, and their conversations eventually led to the idea of making Creep, combining Bryce's documentary instincts and techniques with Duplass's knack for subversion, spontaneity, and eccentricity. They didn't even wait for funding or a perfectly fine-tuned script. They just took a camera out into the woods and made a movie.
Wild.
Yeah. So, shortly after that film premiered at South by Southwest in March of 2014, Duplass stated that he planned to turn the film into a trilogy, with all 3 films being completed by the end of 2015.
Oh, sir.
Yes. Got a bit big for our britches there, but obviously, that didn't happen, as the careers of both Duplass and Bryce took off in the wake of that film's success. So,
right.
It premieres at South by in March of 2014, but it doesn't get released until June of 2015, more than a year after its festival premiere. And that same week Creep was released, Bryce released his underseen but critically acclaimed sex comedy, The Overnight. So they were really, he was really busy with that, which, by the way, if y'all have never seen The Overnight, it's really, really, really good. It's like Taylor Schilling and Adam Scott and Jason Schwartzman, and it's like they're 2 couples and they like hang out and maybe want to have an orgy together.
Okay. I remember this because you talked about it when we covered Creep, and I think I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I should watch that. Folks, still have not watched it.
Also, like 75 minutes long.
There we go. He's got a sweet
Nothing
spot.
better. Nothing better.
Truly. Give me a short film.
Exactly. But The Overnight was executive produced by Duplass and his brother Jay. So, I mean, like, it all stayed in the family. And at that time, Duplass was wrapping up the final season of The League, the FX series he was on, but also starting the also underseen and critically acclaimed HBO series Togetherness, as we have already discussed.
There we go.
So again, it's the old scheduling issues excuse as to why Creep 2 didn't happen sooner.
Don't you hate it when your friends get super busy and then you can't make shit with them anymore?
The success sucks.
It's real unfortunate. But discussions of Creep 2 finally started between the two men a year later in May of 2016. But by the time they started talking about it, they realized they faced a fundamental problem, which was the cat of Duplass's character being a serial killer was out of the bag. So they needed to find a new method of maintaining the first film's idiosyncrasy and high stakes, not wanting to, quote unquote, go back to the well like most sequels do. They wanted to find another well entirely.
Which is interesting. I feel like we're going to have a conversation about how this film does and doesn't distinguish itself from that first film. Mm-hmm. And I'm very interested because I like both of these films for different reasons, but I can't say that I like the second one more. So I'm interested to unpack that with the two of you.
Well, so can you say that you like the first one more or that you like them both equally?
I think I prefer the first one because of the novelty, but I appreciate that this film is trying to do something different. But also, I think even as we say that, there's probably people listening saying, oh, but there's so many callbacks to the first one. Like, we're really using a lot of the same narrative techniques, albeit in slightly different ways, which I think is why this film is very interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and I think that's why, too, hopefully you'll find the Creep tapes very interesting, because like the first episode of that show is very much kind of a condensed version of the first film, where it's like, okay, if you've never seen the movies before, like here's the gist of what you're getting. But each tape kind of takes a different approach to what he does with his victims, because it almost feels anthology-like in a way.
I can see it.
Yeah.
And I think that is where the franchise needs to continue its freshness, is the variety that Creep, Mark Duplass, like has with his victims. You can't have him do the same thing every time.
No.
Exactly. So anyway, but looking for this new well was fine, because when Bryce and Duplass had first worked together on Creep, they'd barely known each other. And by this point, they had developed a deep emotional and professional bond. And so combined with the film's low overhead and the complete reveal at the end of the first Creep, this bond allowed them to move in a significantly new direction where, the first film asked if this guy could be a serial killer. Creep 2 asks, why is this guy a serial killer?
I don't think I completely agree with that statement. I don't think that's what the second film is doing at all, but sure.
I thought the exact same thing when I read this. And I actually should point out, so a lot of this information, I got it from two sources. So the main source is a Vulture article from October of 2017 called Why Creep 2 Isn't Actually a Horror Movie, written by Kevin Lincoln. I know. But very insightful, by the way, though. Okay. And then the other one is Director Patrick Bryce on Creep 2 and Cal Arts, written by Christine Ziemba for Cal Arts, his blog page.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
So, they knew that the payoff of the first movie gave away anything that they would hope to continue as a mystery. So, they battered around ideas. So, that was step one, establishing this why is this guy a serial killer, which again, yes, we can quibble with that. But step two was figuring out a new protagonist. And at some point, Bryce brought Duplass the work of a video artist that he was a fan of named Laurel Nakadate, who is known for creating video and photographic works that explore themes of sexuality, femininity, and gender roles, and the knife edge between vulnerability and power within chance encounters.
I love that line because it is such a knife's edge, and that if I was going to define, the first movie is about, is this guy a serial killer? The second movie is about, is his victim capable of what he's capable of? I think in the way that they lost the mystery with the end reveal of the first movie, they flipped that mystery back on the subject.
Right. Yes.
Well, so this artist, Laurel Nakadate, like one of her first works was her film Happy Birthday, released in 2000. And in this film, Nakadate asked 3 men to celebrate her birthday with her in intimate one-on-one encounters. But it was not her birthday, and she did not know these men. She used these scenarios to explore the uncertainty of relationships with strangers, and through that work, she aimed to establish herself as a host and a hostage simultaneously, diving deeper into the controversial issues of being an Asian American woman in a white male-dominated society. And so it's a thing where it's like she was literally like could have been putting herself in danger, just like Sara in this film, multiple times.
I love it because you're also like, that's psychotic.
Just being a woman
for a different. It is, yes, but that's also psychotic for like a completely different set of reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I think, though, because I did peruse Letterboxd a little bit, and there were a couple reviews that were like, this woman is so stupid. Why is she doing this? And it's like,
no, stop.
I know.
No.
Missing the whole fucking point of the movie.
And the thing is, too, it's like, I mean, I feel like the film does a really good job of, like, telling you why she's still doing this.
Yeah.
But like, part of this Nakadate's vignettes that's like really tense is just knowing that, maybe she's putting herself in danger. And Bryce thought that would be a great inroad into providing the justification for someone actually spending time with Duplass's character. And it would allow us to let him be completely honest and let the audience be in on his honesty. So the hope was also to let the audience fear for this person and not be mad at her for sticking around.
And I don't personally. I don't know how you two feel. I'm not going to speak for you, but I think that Sara is the most fascinating part of this film. And there are a couple of points where I question how truthful she's actually being, but I never once think, like this dumb bitch just needs to get out of here. I think, if I was in that situation, I'd be getting the hell out of there.
Yes. If anything, my main quibble with Creep 1 is that original Aaron, the role that Patrick Bryce plays, frustrated me so much because he was such a dumbass.
Yeah, he's missing all the red flags.
Right. And there is
he's a man, though.
Exactly. Wow. That's what I think is so interesting. And there is obviously horror to be mined from that. The idea of like, please look behind you. What are you doing? Why wouldn't you look behind you? It puts tension on the audience. But I loved that in the sequel, it's like any woman that's doing this is doing this with an agenda of her own.
Yes.
Because, like you said earlier, this is how you walk through the world as a woman. You're going to come in with a plan.
Yeah. Well, and you're also going to recognize those red flags, as Sara quite does immediately. Whereas in the first one, Aaron's kind of like, what? Like, I can't be in any real danger.
Right. Yep.
So anyway, but this artist is obviously the basis for the character of Sara, played by Desiree Akhavan. Though her videos end up being less voyeuristically risque and more casually depressing, which, of course, kind of kickstarts the plot of the movie.
Sure.
But nevertheless, like, she's not a vulnerable damsel in distress the way that Bryce's character was in the first film.
Right.
But, actually, to go on to this, this also ignores the mere fact that they wrote a female protagonist instead of a male one for the sequel, which immediately, as we've said, changes those dynamics. And Bryce wanted to have someone who was not equally as fucked up as the creep character, but who had an element of questionable intent. So there you go, Brooke. You're right on the money with that.
Yep.
He believed it would do a disservice to the character if they just showed her as innocent. They had to hopefully create a real core motivation for her being there, but also set up a conceit where not only is she there because she has to be, she's there because she wants to be too.
Right. And I think that is where you could quibble a little bit. Like, I'm now circling back on my own argument.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you wanted to push back on this being a horror film, or if you wanted to say, oh, it is a little bit experimental because it's not falling into a traditional or classical mode of horror, is this idea that she is not a damsel in distress and she does not need to be there. Like, she could actually escape. And I think that's one of the things I find really subversive about the character, is that she's choosing to be there. She's putting herself in danger, but she's actually not, subjected to his whims in a dangerous fashion.
Right. It's a film about power dynamics and who has control and when and why and how that balance shifts and like how gender can play into it. And it sort of flips. I'm just going to call the character Aaron, but we mean Duplass.
At this point, yes.
It sort of flips what seems to be his MO from his previous kills, which is like the horror of social niceties, the horror of politeness and not wanting to offend someone, into him being like, you need to leave. And Sarah saying, I don't want to. Like, no, you can't basically like politely guilt me into doing what you want me to do.
Right. Yeah. Because she's as fucked up as him, arguably.
Right. And she knows that he's running some sort of con on her.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because she keeps not one-upping him. That's not the right word that I want to use, but matching him in his kind of unpredictability. And in a way that I think makes it much more compelling than watching OG Aaron with new Aaron in the first film. And again, I really like the first Creep movie. I just ever so slightly preferred this one. But also, like, with that power dynamic, I feel like at the beginning you're like, you think Aaron has the power, but then again, like, Sarah keeps kind of subverting your expectations, and then the line gets blurred to where in the back half of the film, I'm never 100% sure who is in control.
Or how much she is acting. Yeah,
right.
It really is a movie about like matching each other's freak and like the power that holds.
Which is why I do think that the rom-com assertions still apply here, even though arguably that first film is more like a queer-coded. Is this going to be a man for man meetup?
Queer-coded.
This one I still feel has an interesting. Because you could argue, oh, well, now it's a man and a woman, and Aaron is admitting that he has killed women in his 39 victims. But I think that there's still so much to unpack here from an interesting queer reading, particularly if you bring Desiree Akhavan's real-life sexuality into the mix.
Which, funnily enough, is my next point. So, Akhavan, who identifies as bisexual, helped address some of these why doesn't she just leave concerns, because she is a writer herself. On top of being a director, by the way, I didn't know this, she wrote and directed the 2018 film, The Miseducation of Cameron Post.
Yes, she did. I'm a huge fan of her. I was so excited when I saw that she was in this, because I just think everything that she does is so interesting. And now she's just kind of like hanging out directing TV. And I want to see something that is her like child again, because appropriate behavior is great. The bisexual is short-lived but great. And she's just, I love watching her on screen. I think she's very magnetic.
I
Big
agree.
personality.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, I'm sure, because I've actually never seen The Miseducation of Cameron Post, but it's a thing where it's like
solid.
It's good. Yeah.
I would love to see her write and direct more, but honestly, I love her performance in this movie. I love this character of Sarah, which I think works because she helped create this character. You know, she would constantly question this character that Bryce and Duplass had created and help refine her as they went along.
Right. Trace, remind me, these are mildly improvisational, or are they heavily scripted and made to look like improv?
So here we go. Filming began in September of 2016 in Los Angeles and Lake Arrowhead and took place over the course of, get this, 6 days.
There we go.
So good.
It was also a bigger film with a cast of 5 instead of a cast of 2. So, just like the first film, they would film a scenario a couple of times, watch the tape back, and make adjustments based on what they saw. Now, there was
Wait. They watched their own creep tapes?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. It's basically they're watching their dailies, but like, because that's not something I think a lot of actors get to do when they're making a
not
film.
even the director usually doesn't even get the luxury of doing that on set.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the time.
Well, so also like that first film, though, Bryce said that there was a quote-unquote scriptment of roughly 15 pages with major plot beats and some dialogue plotted out. I couldn't tell if this is what they did with like Creep 2 or not, but I wager the answer is yes. They probably did it very, very similarly.
Mm-hmm.
One camera was used for the whole production, and it was the same camera they used for the first movie, a Panasonic HVX from the mid-2000s that, and I quote, doesn't require a lot of knowledge in terms of how to operate.
Oh my God.
Essential.
For shooting, Bryce would often hold the camera so that Akhavan could focus on acting, though you'll notice that Akhavan shares a cinematography credit with Bryce because they would still pass the camera back and forth between the two of them.
That's why I think it's so smart that he cast a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. So, Creep 2 had its world premiere at the Sitges Film Festival in October of 2017 before a VOD release later that month and a Netflix release in December of 2017. It was even more critically successful than the first film, too. We're looking at a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Damn. All right.
Now, this is granted 26 reviews, so it's not like a ton, but an average score of 7.7 out of 10. However, Letterboxd users have it at a 6.6 out of 10. Or a 3.3 out of 5 if you're going by the actual score.
There we go. Yeah. Brooke, we've been finding that Letterboxd has been letting us down increasingly. It used to be, if you want a better, more accurate score, at least in terms of our appreciation of the film.
Compared to IMDb scores,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And lately we've been noticing they've been trending down. It's been disappointing.
It's interesting because I do think there are certain films that really over-index and certain films that really under-index on Letterboxd.
That is true. Yeah.
It hasn't quite evened out yet, but it is, like, it's both more reliable and less reliable,
Yeah. Depending on the film, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you just go to like My Friends and you just scroll down the reviews and just look at the general like star rating of all of them.
Yes.
Yes. That way you can remain in your silo and never expose yourself to the opinions of other people you don't know.
I mean, I can expose myself to those opinions, but when I'm looking at the average score for a film among all of Letterboxd users, no, I don't particularly care about that.
No. Let's not talk about the intelligence of mass groups of people, shall we?
Like, there's a reason we don't list the IMDb score on these things.
Oh, I don't trust IMDb scores.
Oh, God, no.
That's where Letterboxd is heading.
People haven't started review bombing Letterboxd yet.
There we go.
What we're saying.
That's true. But before I pass it off to you, Joe, just really quick, a little anecdote. So this is kind of wild. Bryce said that audiences at test screenings kept telling him that, like Sara, they didn't believe Aaron was a killer, despite having just watched Aaron kill somebody in the opening scene of the film.
Oh my God.
He chalks it up to Sarah's disbelief being so genuine and Duplass's honesty so disarming that you start to wonder whether this all might be some big misunderstanding or an art project gone horribly wrong. And I'm just like, well,
oh my God, no.
If you've seen the first film, no, but I guess he's saying test screening. So some people probably haven't seen the first film when they're walking into this.
Oh my God, can you imagine going into this one as your first creep?
I mean, I think you could, though.
I think you could.
Maybe I should have done a thought experiment and done it that way. I don't think so either, because based on my knowledge of the first movie, of course, believed him, but was also significantly more interested in how he was interacting with Sara as an equal, having seen him interact with his victims.
Aaron, OG, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's to see like the shifts in how he behaves around each one of them.
Yes.
Well, so I just think we are able to appreciate not just Duplass's performance, because I do think he is genuinely fantastic in this role in both films, but he gets to do more here because he's playing off of our audience knowledge of who he was in that first film, up to the point of taking his victim's name and appropriating that in this second film. Like, I don't know. You know what? Maybe I'm convincing myself and leeching off of your opinions. But yeah, the second one is, I just think it's a more complex film because it doesn't live and die based on the twist reveal of, is he actually a killer?
And yes. I think maybe that there's an ingenuity just in the basic premise of this compared to the first film that I just find very refreshing.
It's riskier.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as horror connoisseurs, as we all are, it's more interesting to me to watch because I don't feel that I know what's going to happen. I really didn't know what was going to happen.
No, the end of this film could have gone in 5 different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, okay, Joe, well, why don't we talk about what happens in this? Okay, it's an 80-minute movie, but that cold open is 8 minutes. So this is really like a 72-minute movie.
Yeah, I mean, what's fun about this opening is much like you described the Creep Tapes, Trace. It feels like this could be its own just standalone short film or Creep Tape.
And that's actually, you're spot on with that, Joe. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Oh,
So
fun.
we open with a POV from a box, and we see that it has been delivered to the house of Dave, who is played by Karan Soni. Love him. He opens it. He discovers a CD that says "Play Me," and then he follows the instruction and watches. And I love that instead of showing us what is on the tape, because we already have a sense of it, we stay in the box in a static long take as Aaron, quotation mark, is introduced. Of course, this is Mark Duplass.
I also look, because, we know that there's a camera inside whatever he gets in the box, but if you've seen the first film, you can very clearly tell this is Peachfuzz's hair that's on the outskirts of the border of the frame.
Yeah.
Also, Sony, queer actor. I didn't realize that.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that Bryce is actually very strategic in particularly his casting, like most of the time, but never shies away from queer content.
And you know what, though? Actually, I was like, why was Karan Soni cast in this? Because I couldn't, we've obviously seen him in a bunch of Marvel films and stuff, but he was in Safety Not Guarantee with Duplass.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, I think we talked about it last time, but Brooke, have you seen that one?
I have not, but
oh, it's a really solid film. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, I it's one of those things where I'm like, I actually can't believe that I haven't seen it.
You'll get around to it eventually.
I'll get around to it. I will. And then Karan Soni is in something else that he did as well. He's now he's like in the stable.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. All right, so Aaron comes in, and we immediately understand that these two are friends. Aaron is very concerned about what is going on. We watch the tape together, and we hear dialogue that suggests that the tape is depicting Dave's house from the previous night. So he has a stalker. Dave stands up to get a beer, and this is when Aaron winks at the camera and us and says hello. And then he actually adjusts it. So it's like he takes the camera and us, twists it so that we can watch the two of them sit on the couch. And then we get all of this queer-coded dialogue. I know we're talking about friendship, but when we're saying things like, I fucking love you, it's just two guys hanging out, but the meeting was kismet. We're lamenting that they could have been soulmates and they started out hot and heavy, but then we turn into this.
Because we don't really, I don't think in either film we get an inkling as to what Aaron's sexuality is. If he even does find people sexually attractive, I'm still not 100% sure he does, but there's so much homoeroticism in, I think more so in the first movie because we have two male characters, but I don't know, man. Aaron does give off queerness to me in this film a bit.
This scene in particular feels like they knew what they were doing. I questioned that in the first film, as I often do, whether it's like, was this all one big accident or did they know? But for this one, I was like, it's clearly meant to be rom-com language.
Yeah.
Yes. Trace, I'm going to propose an answer to your question, and I wonder if we can debate it throughout the episode as we go. I'm going to suggest that Aaron, at least from this film and maybe into the Creep Tapes, we'll find out soon.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that he is a pansexual murderer. So he has to develop a kind of romantic relationship with his victims, but he is not determined by sexuality. So he falls in love with individual victims and then forges the bond with them so that he can gain satisfaction when he kills them.
So he's not a romantic, but he could still be asexual, couldn't he?
Possibly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're looking at a demisexual kind of guy.
Can you explain that for our listeners, Brooke?
Can. So demisexual is basically what you just said. You have to create a intimate relationship beyond physicality with the other person before you can feel sexual attraction.
Okay.
Like you don't feel sexually attracted to someone if you don't know them well.
So you don't have random hookups is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's complicated, I think, similarly to like the asexual spectrum. People identify it very individually. Oh, this is what it means to me. This is what it means to me.
Right. Okay.
But I do think for the character of Aaron, that is part of the appeal. That is kind of like the sexiness of these kills, is that he gets to get close to his victims and quote unquote tell them everything. He gets off by getting close to them and forging these bonds with them, which I think is such an interesting way to look at a serial killer. So untraditional, so much more interesting that he targets possibly primarily men and women, that he's not just a killer of women, which is so classic.
Refreshing.
Yeah. I loved it. But yes, I think that is what's getting him off, the way that killers need to get off.
Well, so it's almost like he's constantly, at least in the first time, he's edging himself until he tells Aaron, "Oh, I'm a serial killer," and that's like his big climax, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why we end with that sex scene where he kills him with the axe.
Right.
Yeah, whereas here, I think this is what we're seeing from this cold open. So obviously, it's a reintroduction of the character, and arguably, yes, if you haven't seen that first film, this would be your, okay, this guy is a murderer, and this is the story we're now going to move beyond. But then for the rest of the runtime, it's about, okay, that's not working for me anymore. So how do I reforge a connection or a relationship? Although I am curious whether the two of you feel like he is even lying about his ennui. Like, is he actually having a midlife crisis as he approaches 40, as he suggests?
I feel like the ambiguity there is intentional. And so I feel like, because I'm a relatively gullible person, I'm kind of like, yeah, I do believe he's doing this. Like, because I mean, but truthfully, there's no way to ever know if anything that comes out of his mouth is truthful or not.
Yes. Not to invoke the Joker.
Okay.
God forbid we do that. But I do think the idea is that he tells the most interesting story to the person in front of him. Whatever that person is going to find the most fascinating, that's who he becomes. And I guess this is what the creep tapes will or will not tell us, is that he's slipping into the person that they want him to be. So I'm like the opposite of you, Joe. I'm inclined to say I don't think that he's ever telling the truth, including in this, because there's a reveal that he has seen Sarah's videos. So he knows that this is what she does.
Yep. And even, I imagine people are saying, well, but he's not performing for anyone except himself when he's saying, like, he, sadly kills Dave as we expected him to.
Well, he's a narcissist. Of course he wants to do it all for himself.
But he says to the camera, like, oh, what is wrong with me, when he throws down the knife, and he seems so dejected and just, he's not feeling it. But one could argue that he is performing for his future self when he watches this tape as a justification of, okay, well, I'm going to switch things up for video number 40.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's introduce Sara, our co-lead. So we meet Sara through a kind of montage of her YouTube series Encounters. And as you alluded to in your primer here, Trace, these are very personal, she's answering online ads. So it's very similar to what we were seeing with OG Aaron in the first film. But these are sex adjacent. Like, they often seem vulnerable, lonely people that we're trying to make a brief connection with. But I'm sure you both notice they're all men.
Yeah, it seems very kink oriented. I don't even know, because the babying guy, is that sexual, or is that just I guess is a kink inherently sexual?
It's fetish, I would say.
Fetish. Oh, thank you. There you go. Yes.
Yeah. Kink is inherently sexual. I feel like fetish is more it's a gray area.
It's a lifestyle.
It could be sexual. It could just be, no, you just really like it.
Yeah.
Yes. You have a very strong reaction to it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it directly translates to now I gotta go take care of some business.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. I made the mistake of like Webster's dictionarying this shit, but like the definition, I know the definition of fetish does say it's a form of sexual desire in which gratification is strongly linked to a particular object or activity or a part of the body other than the sexual organs.
Okay, so kink then, did we flip them around? Is kink more of like, it's kind of a lifestyle and it doesn't always have to immediately be followed by sexual gratification? I feel like there's so many kinky listeners who are just going to be like,
I know.
What the fuck is wrong with you guys? Guys specifically, because Brooke, I think you're actually more on your shit.
Well, I don't know. I could have said the completely wrong thing.
So now I'm kind of wondering if kink is something that we just adopted, because the only definitions I'm getting for kink are like a stiffness in the neck or a sharp twist or curve in something that is otherwise straight.
Merriam-Webster, come on.
This is from Oxford, actually.
I always think of kink as being related to like taboo things specifically, whereas a fetish is not necessarily taboo. It's just kind of weird. But that's the whole idea with kink, right? Is that there's like sexiness in the danger or in the forbiddenness of it.
Well, okay, so here's an alternative definition for kink. In human sexuality, kinkiness is the use of sexual practices, concepts, or fantasies that are not conventional. That's
there you go.
That's the basic definition.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Whereas like you can have a weird fetish that's just kind of weird. It's not concerning. It's not like, it's not taboo. It's just a little...
But nevertheless, both of these things are inherent. You're getting sexual gratification out of these things.
Sexy.
Okay.
I think based on the inspiration for the character, though, even though I think it's smarter to have her be more emotionally connecting with these men, since that's what we're about to see her do for the whole film.
Sure.
There's like an unspoken rule that this is definitely kind of like under the surface a sex thing. Yeah.
Well, because she's essentially a sex worker then by doing this.
But she's not being paid.
She's not being paid. Yeah, she's a pro bono sex worker.
Pro bono. She's so generous.
I know.
This is what they mean when they say you're paid in exposure.
Well, yeah, I mean, and for her, the exposure is not working because
9 whole views. So sad.
That hurts.
It hurts so bad.
I don't know if y'all felt seen by this, but when she just says to her to the camera, I think I might be deeply untalented. Oof. I felt that in my bones.
Yep. Yep. The insecurity, the questioning. Here's the thing, though. That video of her with the man in the water alone, guaranteed a couple hundred hits. Weird people are going to seek that kind of content out.
I feel like the babying video would have gotten a lot of hits.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing is I was like, they really made her such a terrible YouTuber. You could have thrown up 500 views and we would have been like, ugh, rookie numbers.
No.
Yeah.
If she would have been doing her series on Pornhub instead, she would have gotten tons of views.
I know. It's a wrong platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that she's actually not leaning into the sex is probably part of her problem, which again does help to explain a little bit about why when Aaron almost literally introduces himself by taking off his clothes, you're like, oh, jackpot, because now we're mixing sex into it.
I, as the audience member, was so aligned with Aaron in that moment, though, where he was like, there's an inherent tension between us. We should just get it out of the way.
Yeah, the whole this barrier of what do you look like naked? That's what happens between every person. And I was like, honestly, yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Because we as the audience, I feel like, are thinking it as well. Being like, oh, well, is this a sex thing? That's the first thought.
Wait, so because Joe, I think we discussed this before. You don't inherently wonder what your friends look like naked.
The two of you immediately went there, and people probably heard me say, ew, no, because I don't like that, but it's also because I have a whole bunch of issues around my own body, so I don't want to get naked in front of people. But I do think that you're both inherently right. I'm not suggesting you're wrong. It's a personal thing for me.
Yeah.
But the reality is, by switching the gender of the character, by having a female into the mix, I think that this is the savviest thing that we could do for this introduction, because it plays into the discomfort that we already feel around Aaron and what he does. It challenges Sara to say, okay, how actually comfortable are you when suddenly it's not just, okay, we're doing a slightly weird thing with a strange man. It's this man is showing you his penis within 5 minutes of meeting you. And then it also gets to the heart of there's a different dynamic when men and women are in the mix as opposed to 2 men, 2 women, so on.
Yes. This was the first thing that I was nervous about for this movie when I realized that we had a female protagonist, is I was like, well, is it now just kind of like a sex thing?
Yes.
Or you're my perfect match. And it's not, which I love.
Yeah, because I know we jumped ahead to this scene where he gets naked, but like it doesn't feel inherently sexual at all. Like it feels very just not innocent, maybe.
Clinical.
I think it's hilariously performative because even though I do think that Mark Duplass, the actor, is quite comfortable, like he wouldn't have volunteered to appear naked if he didn't think it was in service of the character and the plot. But I don't think Aaron, the character, like he's trying to posture, like you can see him adopt a pose when he drops the towel, and it just feels inauthentic. Like this is absolutely a serial killer trying to assume the mode or the appearance of a random weird-ish man. And he's looking to get a reaction out of Sara. And this is the first big test, right? You know, sure, we did the text of, do you scare easily? And we did, you know, a hug and the smoothie when she comes in, but none of that is actually red flag central. And this is the first big test of, are you going to freak out? Are you going to be weirded out? And she passes with flying colors because she's like, cool, I'll just take off my clothes too.
And if anything, he's weirded out when she's like, is it my turn? Yeah.
Well, because it feels a little bit like the same conversations that both versions of Speak No Evil are having, right? With the social niceties and like, you know, or even maybe, I guess to a lesser extent, like Karan Kusama's The Invitation, you know, where it's like how many potential red flags have to go off before you say, this is not right, I have to go.
This definitely reminded me of both Speak No Evil and The Invitation. Particularly the first movie, but like this Creep 2 is how I wish people would act in those movies. You know, by being fascinated enough that we have a plot. You can't just have her turn around and leave or there's no movie. Right. But to have Sara be like, oh, you want to go? Like, let's go. I'll unsettle you just as much as you unsettle me.
So, question for both of you. And this is actually my only kind of quibble with the movie. I do think I would have preferred it if she did believe that he was a serial killer from the get-go, but then also bought into his saying, I'm not going to kill you in the first 24 hours. She's like, cool, as long as I get out of here within 24 hours, we're good. Let's have these really honest conversations with this serial killer.
So you wanted a bit more like a ticking clock kind of situation.
It's not even the ticking clock that I'm wanting, although that to me would at least be the reason for her to stay. Because I get it, you know, like she doesn't believe he's a serial killer, which adds to the, okay, well, why is she still staying? Because she doesn't think she's actually in any danger. She just thinks he's a weird guy. But
that's what I would say is probably like, if that question came up, that the note was probably, well, we can't have her actually think he's a serial killer, or it would just be so unbelievable that she would stay.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know. It's again, this is me being gullible. I kind of be like, oh, you're not going to kill me in the first 24 hours? Okay, cool. Yeah, let's have a conversation and film it.
Oh my God. And this is how Trace ends up in a ditch somewhere.
100%. I mean, it's again, maybe this adds as to why I don't really care about people making stupid decisions in horror movies, because I'm like, I would probably make many of the same decisions.
But I would argue, and maybe this is me being gullible or slightly deluded, but I don't think she makes a bunch of dumb decisions because she is constantly reevaluating. Like, I think she pegs him, not literally, but that would be interesting.
Figuratively, for sure, though.
Figuratively, she pegs him, like, pretty nearly right off the bat. Like, when he comes at her with a smoothie and then makes a joke about, oh, I promise you it's not poisoned, as though, haha, it could actually be. Which way do you want to take it? I think she's immediately figuring out, okay, is he just weird or is he violent? Is he dangerous? And so on. And I think she's just constantly notching those reactions and making educated decisions. Now, would we, as regular people who don't seek out danger for views, make the same decision? No, but that's also why it is a fucking movie.
Yeah.
That's why she's the protagonist that we're following. I think that, and I know we'll dig into it, but the two moments where, I guess 3 moments that she really unsettles him right off the bat are not laughing at his poison smoothie joke.
Yep.
Being down to get naked and being like, here, sit down, hold the camera. And then telling him that his wolf mask is cute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, he hates that.
Love that she is so ballsy, regardless of what she believes or doesn't believe, because immediately, even if she, you know, she could be lying about actually believing that he's a serial killer.
That's the other question I have.
True.
Yeah. The point is that she is meeting him at a place that he doesn't expect her to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what keeps their relationship interesting and precarious. And even if she does think that, oh, he might kill me, she believes that she has enough of a hold on him to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, that's just it.
I do still believe that. I don't think she believes it, if only because of her reaction after he tries to hang himself. Or she thinks he's trying to hang himself. You know, that feels very genuine to me.
Which is funny, though, because that's not about him being a serial killer. That's about whether he's willing to take a life, and it just happens to be his own.
Yeah, but that was enough to almost make her want to leave, you know? So it's like, okay.
Well, because she can't match that freak.
Or maybe much like Erin in the cold open, like she's, performing for the camera, performing for whoever her viewers that she wants. So she's playing
I think that's
dumb.
how you read it. If you do believe that she truly does think he's a serial killer, is that she's playing this up to make it the best episode, the best finale for encounters that she can possibly construct.
And I have to say, maybe it's just the optimist and opportunist in me, but I'm like, I think that's what she's doing. The let's fucking go that she says in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's ready to go. I don't remember if this is explained or not, forgive me, but when he says, hey, you should behead me with this axe, like, it's not like she immediately backs away.
Nope.
She's thinking about it.
Yep.
So
there's a read of this film that she is also a sociopath who has the potential to be a killer. And as the movie progresses, I think that's what he latches onto. That's why he becomes more interested and he becomes more revitalized in what he has chosen to do, his vocation, right?
Right.
Because I think he realizes, oh, this could be a mentor-mentee, or like she could actually be a soulmate in a more traditional definition of the word, because she might also commit a murder.
Mm-hmm. He is looking for a soulmate. And I like the idea that he has been waiting for someone to match that so that they can die together, as opposed to having to kill them. That it's unfortunate when he has to kill someone.
Yeah, and again, I love that regardless of what you believe, you are continually forced to question, how much are we being lied to as the audience? Like, how much truth-telling are either of these characters telling each other, but also us?
How complicit are we?
Yeah, but that to me is what makes it such a fun watch. Like, I do think this is a fun movie because I'm just constantly questioning the motives and the decisions and the quotes of both characters in this movie. It's so fun. It's so fun to watch.
Okay, let's talk about the nudity scene though, because I feel like people, we're still living in a day and age where it's a bit of a rarity to see a peen on screen, but I think that people often get distracted. They're dickmatized. And I'm curious, do the two of you have any issues with the fact that we don't see nudity from Sara?
You see it a bit, not to be like super
boobs,
bisexual about it, but I was locked the hell in because I was wondering that exact same question. Because I was really not expecting him to get full frontal. Glad he did. A lot of the Letterboxd reviews are about his tan lines. I'm like, okay, guys. Calm down.
He's a serial killer, not an OnlyFans star. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But and actually, even for his penis, though, like to have a non-prosthetic penis, because I think now we are getting more male full frontal nudity, but they're all prosthetics.
Yeah.
Which I vehemently disagree with. If you're going to do it,
I will take it. I will take it. If I can get it, I will take, like, my preference would be authentic. My second choice is prosthetic. Like, I'm still happy that we're normalizing penises.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, no woman in the history of acting has ever slapped on fake boobs.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh, actually, only Linnea Quigley in Night of the Demons when she puts that lipstick in her tit. Those are fake.
That's more of an appliance so that we can do a special effect with it.
This idea that it's so brave for a woman to show nudity on screen, and I'm like, okay, I just want an equal opportunity across the board here.
Truly, like, let's get the men to match that freak, right?
Exactly. So that's why I'm like, Duplass, let's go.
We definitely get more Duplass peen in the creep tape, so don't worry.
Oh, great.
Okay, but wait, so Brooke, go back to this because you said you locked in and we are seeing nudity, but I'm like, oh, do we? Like I feel like it's a very strategic framing so that we're zooming in so we get a hint or we think we see something, but we're actually pushing past it. And this obviously is a very strategic creative choice.
Yes. So I think the zoom, I love that we're analyzing this so deeply. The zoom is strategic enough to miss her dropping her underwear, but it catches her unhooking her bra. And then it keeps zooming. But, you know, considering how small the filmmaking team is and how involved everyone is, I guarantee if they wanted to completely frame out the character of Sara being topless, then they would have.
But you do get a full shot of her breasts. It just doesn't hold on it.
It just doesn't hold on it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But we don't get a picture of her. Or we don't get a frame of her genitals.
Right. Yeah. But what do you think the purpose behind that is? So why not do a tit for tat?
Literally
a literal tit.
I think that one, no matter how involved or uninvolved the horror genre Patrick Brice wants to be, you're thinking about the complexities of seeing male nudity versus seeing female nudity. Female nudity isn't, often ascribed to being inherently sexual, whereas male nudity sometimes isn't.
Yeah.
And I also think it's a reflection of the character's opinions. Sarah's no nonsense. She's here to document. She's here to get exactly that. And she's like, if this guy is showing me his dick, then that is what the camera is going to see.
Right.
Whereas I think that she catches him off guard by being so chill with it. And that he, as a response, is like, okay, I don't really know what to do here. I didn't expect you to be so cool about this. And him zooming in is, in a way, attempting to shield her from the camera's gaze. And regardless of how deeply the film wants to think about it, I do think it's nice that there is a little bit of a gender reversal.
Well, I was going to say, so from Bryce's side of things, not what we're talking about Aaron, but I think for Bryce, yeah, it's very much no one's going to expect penis in this movie. And if we do show the penis first, they're going to expect that we're going to show all of Akhavan as well. And so that to me just feels like a subversion. No, we're not going to do that because that's the expected thing to do. And also that's fucked up.
Exactly.
And I think it also does play into what you said, Brooke, that female nudity is still inherently sexual for most audiences. Regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, we've been trained as moviegoers to be sexy lady naked on screen. Whereas male nudity is still treated as uncomfortable, a little bit weird. Why is this man showing me his dick?
Yep, exactly. And even in a non-sexual scene like this, to your point, it's so ingrained that if we do see a full nude shot of Akhavan, that's what we're going to be ascribing it to.
Yes.
Yeah. And I can understand her being no, that's not what the point of this scene is.
No. Okay, so after this is when she has the kind of angel devil discussion with herself in the bathroom. So this is first big test, and now she has to decide, okay, am I going to go for this? And she does. She lets fucking goes. But I love that we do have this moment, right? Because this is a pretty confronting incident to have with a stranger, and she has to decide, am I comfortable enough to pursue this for my art, for the views, for the likes, and so on?
For the lulz.
Yeah, but she does also, this is the first instance where she says, but I'm not a fucking idiot because I am going to put this knife in my boot.
As any woman would.
Truly.
Yeah, I mean, she should probably have maybe more than that. Even just pepper spray or brass knuckles or so. She should have a plethora of weapons to defend herself with. But it's fine. Knife in the boot, good enough. Although it's not, but...
Okay, so she comes out and we say, cool, let's try to do some pretty conventional jump scares. And obviously, if you've seen the first film, you know that really got OG Aaron. And here, not fussed. Doesn't work at all.
So great.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw this, I was like, oh, he's playing with someone that's on his level.
Yep. Because then we try to break out the Peachfuzz mask, and she's not impressed. She does think it's cute, which I kind of love. I wonder how aware Bryce and Duplass were, because they would have had like a full festival cycle with that first film before they made this one. So they would know that people wanted a Peachfuzz mask. Like the gif of Mark Duplass dancing in it became very viral. So I think they have an understanding that people like this character because he's weird, but they also find him kind of lovable.
Well, I think it's because, and again, we're straddling that genre line. Like, yes, I consider this a horror movie, but this movie is very funny. Both of these movies are very funny. And a lot of that comes from, again, you have these social interactions and like how they're just not quote unquote normal.
Again, it reminds me so much of like, you know, Tethered Tim Robinson, where you are playing with like how uncomfortable you can make people and whether that is funny or whether it's upsetting.
Well, so like cringe humor, you know, like some people can take cringe humor, other people cannot. And I do find cringe humor very funny. And that, that's very much the bulk of Tim Robinson. It's like constant cringe humor.
Yes, but it depends like what the topic is as well. Sometimes you can handle it, sometimes you can't. I also think that like, particularly in the instance of calling the Peachfuzz mask cute, it's emasculating.
Oh God, yes.
In a very specific way. And it again, it clearly rattles him.
But so here's the thing. But do you think that he is someone that cares about masculine appearances very much?
I think he does in this instance. Like, he's looking to get a scared reaction or even an uncomfortable reaction. Like, anything except cute would have sufficed.
Cute. Yep.
I guess that's, I don't know. I guess in my mind, I'm just like, oh yeah, Aaron's above all that. Like, he doesn't give a shit. But maybe when it comes to Peachfuzz specifically, he is not that way.
That's his, he puts on that mask to kill. I mean, I guess he doesn't at the beginning of this movie, but in general, you get the idea that that's sort of like his murder persona or an element of it. Right. I think that, even if it's not like strictly like, oh, you just sort of like de-dicked me by calling this mask cute. It's the point that she's not intimidated by it. She's not scared by it.
Right. To the point where he then just wears it in the car because, I guess it didn't work, so I'll leave it on for a little bit.
Yeah, although I love when she says, as a passenger, not great because you can't see the road, because that is exactly what I was thinking. I mean, he's wearing that shit while driving.
Okay, so speaking of comparisons to the first film, I do like that we, for lack of a better term, try to recreate the magic of this videotape, right? So he says, oh, well, I'm doing something really unique. Like, you're going to be my 40th person. I want you to capture this one special day. But then he goes and everything that we saw in the first tape is completely different and it's not working. So the water level is low and there's planes overhead and that fucking bird won't shut the fuck up. And what is he doing with his arms? And it's all very funny, but it feels like this is payoff for paying attention to the first film. Like, it's a great Easter egg in some ways.
Also, as someone who has been on set, and I think like for a film full of filmmakers, I was like, this is really funny. This is arguably the funniest scene in the movie because you're always being interrupted by planes and birds and the sun moving, and God knows what else in the location isn't the way it was when you scouted it the day before. So I think it's also kind of like an Easter egg for the creators of this film.
But you don't think he's actually upset by all this stuff, right? I feel like he's changing his approach to Sara and turning into a petulant child in this scene to see how she reacts to that.
The only thing that I felt like he was genuinely upset about was the very beginning when she with the water, and then she talks him into it by being like, what would Coppola do? You know?
Right.
Just such a funny line.
And then I feel like he realizes that he can work with that and goes for it.
Yeah, like it's not worth getting upset. You just have to be flexible. You've got to go with the flow.
This holiday season, design your dreams and discover the wide range of iconic Ralph Lauren fragrances to enchant your friends and family. Featuring the bold Polo 67 or the energizing Polo Red. Discover a wide selection of Ralph Lauren fragrances gift sets and look out for a complimentary duffel bag at your local Macy's or on Macys.com. The fragrance destination. Purchase needed. See details in stores. Select doors only while stock lasts.
Streaming December 3rd, only on Disney+. From the directors of Spider-Man No Way Home and The Mandalorian comes a brand new series.
It's dangerous out there in space.
Join the crew.
We have to move fast
as they explore the galaxy.
We're not alone down here.
Don't miss the new Star Wars adventure.
Do you want to join me?
Skeleton Crew, 2-episode premiere December 3rd, only on Disney+.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
However you want to describe his behavior, he is throwing a temper tantrum. She does call him a drama queen when he stomps off, and then she finds him in the woods, and he's essentially, I think we all know that he is faking sleeping, because when she wakes him up, he grabs her hand and asks her not to leave him.
Yeah, this is performative as fuck.
Yeah, but it is playing with our audience expectations, because I feel like any horror viewer is going to be like, there's a jump scare coming. There's growls in the woods. She's got the shaky cam. We're like, okay, he's faked her out twice. This is going to be, rule of thirds, rule of threes. The jump scare is going to get her. And then instead it's just a man crying on the ground. Arguably scarier.
Oh, God. A man crying. Oh, no.
I know. But yeah, that it again, like, is playing with Sarah's expectations, but again, we're complicit as viewers.
Right. Yeah. So we cut to that night. We're back at the house, and Sara is doing a confessional style piece to the camera. So she talks about how Aaron has shut down. He's listening to the same song on repeat, and she now has two options. So again, if you're one of those people who gets frustrated with character decisions, it's like, bitch, you've got your out. You could just leave. He's not even going to notice. But she decides she's going to stay. She's going to antagonize him and make sure that she gets what she needs.
Which I thought was an excellent character decision, because this character is sort of fun and lovable, but I was like, yeah, go bother his ass. Like, he's bothersome. He's frustrating. I'm like, he deserves it. Go jerk him around a little bit.
Well, and the reality is that everything that we've seen, sure, he's quirky, he's weird, he's unusual, but he's not different enough from any of the people we saw in that opening encounters montage, right? Like, he's maybe a baby step above that. She needs to suppress him if she wants to get the art that she has come here looking for.
He's a subject for her. She's a victim for him. Who's going to get what they want first?
Oh my God, slap that on the poster. Wait, it's like, are you a filmmaker?
I don't know. I like that she's not there to be. She could really easily, and she does, like, when she needs to, go into the traditionally feminine role of, like, the caretaker, the soother, the listener. But we see when she's just talking to the camera that she's like, yeah, this is when I really put the pressure on.
Right. Yeah. Question for the two of you. Just because the timeline is so iffy, like in terms of when we're actually making the film, if we assume that it is meant to be representative of like 2016, 2017, do you think that she is either live streaming this or backing this up to her YouTube channel as she goes? Because there's a point where it almost feels like he mentions that he knows she has the knife in her boot. And I was like, did he just watch the camera at some point? Or is it because he was able to go and watch the videos? Because that would then assume that he's able to, in real time, adjust his performance as she is doing with him.
I just figured he probably saw the knife in her boot. I mean, there's probably like a bulge in her boot. I just figured he was very...
Way to go with the simplest explanation. And
I thought he was very attentive. And also we know, but from the production history, we know this is a camera from the mid 2000s, which didn't have like these digital YouTube capabilities. You had to fucking transfer that shit via flash drive.
Yeah, I think I would trace, if only because like my biggest suspension of disbelief, which I am certainly happy to do for found footage horror films, is that like, you just...
Yeah.
The characters in universe did not edit this. This is like edited by God.
Professionally.
Yeah. You know? So I feel like this is essentially like a real time unfolding of what's happening.
I overthought it, is what I'm hearing.
No. But Brooke, I'm glad that you mentioned the distinction, though, because for found footage films, it's either like, okay, is this actual found footage and we're just we're seeing it live, or is it edited by someone or something after the fact because we're watching this as it's being aired for whatever fictional channel
I feel like for the most point, unless there is like an internal framing device of like 20 years ago, 3 kids went to the woods. This is the footage that was found. I choose to think of it as like, we're watching the footage direct from Sarah's camera. It's just edited down to
the most important
90 minutes because it's a movie.
Right.
Because it's a movie, you know?
Oh, that's interesting because the end of Creep does contradict that for us.
It
Not
does.
Creep 2, but the end of Creep 1, if folks have forgotten, is where we actually get to see Joseph, a.k.a. he will become Aaron, when he's in his editing bay with all of the Creep tapes. So he's actually watching and presumably editing it down so that it's something easier or better for him to watch.
And he gets jump scared by himself, which I think is so funny.
Actually, then y'all, because I mean, depending on how you view the ending, like, does she survive or does she not? I think, he does kill. He does kill her, and this is his edit of the tape. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, let's plant a flag in that because the ending, I think, is
creepy as fuck.
It's creepy as fuck, but I think it's just so open-ended that I love that there could be multiple endings you could believe in and be absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have heard that Aaron is pouting. He's listening to the same song over and over again. So we go down and we get this one single scene that goes on forever. Him partially lit in the dark in the hot tub.
Yeah.
And we get the whole story about this unnamed band. And Sara loves her Juicy Fruit, the song that he has been playing on repeat. And then we get this backstory, about how he partied with the band. He then accepted a ride from a man who beat him and forced him to dig his own grave and then planned to bury him alive. But Aaron, despite finding this man magnetic and loving him, ended up strangling him with his bare hands and then lay naked next to him in a grave before putting on his clothes. And it's a lot.
So gay.
Well, so I guess this is
I
so
say
gay.
as a compliment, I love it. All serial killing should be a little homoerotic. I mean, you guys are covering Hannibal right now.
Yeah.
Truly.
No.
Yeah.
But I guess, though, this is where we're going into the, why he's a serial killer. But, like, I just thought this entire story was fabricated.
Any of it.
Yeah,
Me too. I don't believe it for a second.
Yeah, not for 1 second.
I mean, this is your Joker piece, Brooke.
Right.
This is
Do you want to know how I got these scars?
Yeah, what makes for a great story, because this truly, it even has an air of supernatural to it, right? Where it's like, I nearly died and then I turned the tables, but then we got naked and we lay in this grave, and then I absorbed a piece of him as I do with all of my 39 victims, as though he's becoming, Uber Aaron or Uber Joseph or something. And you just think, my God, you are the biggest fucking piece of phony shit.
Well,
right.
And again, I'm not going to spoil this, but it's kind of a thing where I do think the show is kind of, I don't think we're going to get I don't think we're ever going to get like a full, like, how did it become this way? Because I just think that's so boring.
No. Nobody wants that.
But I
Nobody
will
wants
say
to know.
that the third episode brings in actress Krisha Fairchild as someone that is familiar with his character. And I think it's not like a whole, like, how did it get this way? But it's more so like you get little tidbits and Easter eggs where you can put it together, but you're still not really sure. Yeah.
Well, we know from the first movie that he has a sister.
Right.
So...
Well, yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Oh, no. Oh,
Maybe.
Actually, no. You're right. Because his sister is voiced by Duplass's real life wife, Katie Aselton, in that movie.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So clearly, like, I mean, no man is an island. We all have some sort of backstory that can be unpicked.
Sure.
But you never really want to know. I love the idea that he's self-mythologizing, that he had this like incredibly profound like brush with death, and it opened up like who he was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. His calling. It almost feels religious, or as I said, supernatural when he describes it. But again, one of the interesting things is that Sara doesn't really respond to this. Like, sure, she climbs into the hot tub with him and she holds him much in the same way that we saw her do in that montage of encounters that opened the film. But I mean, yeah, we can definitely say this is mothering, this is maternal, instinctive, and so on. But she doesn't say like, oh my God, that's a wild story, or that tells me so much about you. It's very, okay. I will now try to comfort you. And then the minute that he seems a little bit better, she climbs out and she's like, I'm going to go shower. Like, I'm done. I've done my part.
Yep. I think it is significant that, to my memory, in the later Never Been Kissed conversation, he does not bring this up.
No.
He does not bring up this element of like his backstory, basically. It's much more down to earth and like, I just didn't have social skills.
Yeah. Yeah. He changes the story.
Depending on who's in front of him and what state of mind they're in, which is great. That's what I want to see forever.
I guess, I mean, I don't know. I didn't necessarily see this critique, but do y'all think maybe other audience members get frustrated by the fact like that we can never trust anything Aaron says? Like, it's kind of, Joe, I'm only thinking about this because I'm thinking back to like our Smile 2 conversation where some of the critiques were like, well, the whole last half of the movie is just like it's all hallucinations. You can't trust what you're seeing. And I know this is not really the same thing, but to me it's kind of in the ballpark where it's like, but you can't trust anything this character says or does. So I don't know. For me, that makes it more interesting, but
I also think it's specifically interesting because he is interacting with different people, or what we're going to see in the future. So we'll get to see a different version of him, but the version of him is entirely depending on other people, not on himself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If anything, what we as an audience can deduce of who he truly is based on those interactions. So how does he change the story? Are there overlaps? Are there glimmers of truth to them? So in some ways, he is a bit of a mystery. He's a cipher, but the way that Duplass plays him and then the characters that he gets to interact with, like if we had a repeat of OG Aaron in this film, it would have been so fucking boring. If, we're lucky enough to have Sara come back as a character in a Creep tape or in a Creep 3 Perfect Universe or something, I don't know if it's going to play as effective, but I'm with you. I do think this makes him more complicated and more interesting.
All right.
I think part of the reason I was hesitant to say that I think that this film is better or that I like it more is because as a gay man specifically, I was disappointed in his confession that he has killed women as well as men, because it gently, I don't think entirely, but it gently contradicts my reading from the first film that he is queer, because he does seem to specifically target men and we only see him kill men.
That was interesting to me, and I felt similarly, but I was also kind of like, okay, he's an equal opportunist.
Well, yes.
It doesn't necessarily take away from the queerness. I think it complicates it, and like we said, makes it more of like he's looking for individuals that he connects with on a deeper level.
Right.
But the idea is like the individuals that he connects with on a deeper level don't have to be men, don't have to be women. I was like actually very surprised though when he said that he's killed men and women. I can't help wondering if they were like, if we're going to keep this franchise going forever, we can't just have him kill a bunch of dudes.
But I mean, to repeat what we've said already, you're assuming he's telling the truth.
Right.
Well, that is true. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why I'm interested in the Creep tapes, because I think it will offer us a variation of who he goes after and the kinds of, I guess, murderous adventures he has. So like, I am going to be interested. I do think we're going to get confirmation that he does kill men and women. I mean, I guess the other interesting thing specifically about Creep 2, and this is me pulling Akhavan's real life bisexuality into the mix, but I think there's a completely different kind of chemistry in this film. Like the first film to me reads quite a bit more romantic comedy with a murder twist, whereas this one feels like I don't actually think he's trying to fuck her. I'm using air quotes in the same way that he was with OG Aaron. Because she is too complicated, she's not going to fall for all this. Like the men have been easy prey for him, in the same way that we saw with Dave in the opening scene, right? I befriend you, we had this hot and heavy initial connection, then I murder you. And characters like Sara and maybe women are more complicated because of the more traditional gender dynamics.
And are inherently more distrustful.
Well, yes.
Of him.
Because men are stupid, and we will fall for anything when it comes to sex.
But again, so let's play with this world again, where it's like, okay, well, what is he saying that's truthful, and what is he saying that's not truthful? Let's assume then that his midlife crisis, for lack of a better term, is truthful, and he only agrees to have Sara be his next victim because he's like, well, I've only killed men before. Let's see what happens when I get a woman, and she again matches him beat for beat.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So.
There's this idea that he is in some ways stuck in an arrested development where he's looking for friends, he's looking for soulmates. He's a 40-year-old virgin, if we assume he's telling the truth.
Right.
Like, he is still possibly in the part of his life where he is programmed to think that he should be looking for a classic romantic relationship. There's something about, you assume, I think, given popular media, that if serial killers are killing women, there is something sexual in nature to the killings. You assume that if serial killers are killing men, there's something else going on.
Right.
And I think that, again, you guys are talking about Hannibal right now, one of my favorite shows of all time. Hannibal is so interesting in the way that it plays with, like, who's dying and why, and what was done to them, and why were they chosen.
Yeah.
So I think being able to dive more into that in the Creep tapes would be very fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think, and for anyone who might be yelling at us, because we do get a shot of all the tapes at the end of the first Creep film, and we can see names on them.
I was going to ask about this.
Brooke, do you remember if there was a female name on any of those tapes?
I don't. I was hoping you were about to tell me. Do you remember?
Yeah. I don't know, and I was actually about to go to Netflix to look it up, but I'm logged
I was
out
about to do the same
password,
thing.
So.
I will do it. I'm going to do it right now.
Okay. We know it's the last shot of the movie, at the very, very end of the movie. So
I got you.
Okay.
I have a definitive answer for us.
Okay.
There are many women's names.
Okay, there we go.
We have David K, Amanda, Nicole, Kate, Tony. Like, there's a bunch. Ellen, Ross, Carol, Tom, Zachary.
Okay.
But I would just like to
50-50.
point out, yeah, all of them are in VHS cases, and I'm sure you mentioned this in your original Creep episode, but Aaron's has a little heart on it. He's special.
Right.
OG Aaron.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, well,
I
so
love
there
it.
you go. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I love it.
His gets a little heart, which I think is significant.
And none of the others have hearts on them?
No.
Okay.
Which is funny because no shade to Patrick Bryce, but Aaron is an inherently less interesting character, I would argue, than Sara.
I'm telling you, I liked the movie very much, but I was like, this fucking guy is
Truly
killing me. My Letterboxd review was like, this is natural selection. He I mean, come on.
He definitely deserved it. I remember when we covered this, the entire discussion was like, at which red flag would you peace out? Because there are too many.
Yes, I do love that Mark Duplass, Aaron, Joseph in the first movie, is like, why wouldn't you look behind you after he murders him with the axe? Because I was like,
it's so mean.
What are you doing, dude? Yes, I think that Sara is such a fascinating character, and I was really not expecting to connect so strongly with a character in this movie, but I was like, oh my god, I love her. She's so fascinating. I think because this isn't like a prototypical good for her horror movie or final girl horror movie, I was like, I love this. I love every kind of like micro movement and decision that she makes and want to unpack why she does it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very smart.
Yeah, like I can definitely understand why someone would watch this film and feel frustrated because she is more self-aware than OG Erin. So we just kind of expect that she should know better and she should be piecing the fuck out. But again, as I said off the top, and I know that sometimes we get criticisms from people who say, oh, well, they won't allow anyone to disagree with them. Their opinions are always right. But I truly do think that the whole point of having this character stick around is not just because she's an entrepreneur, she's an artist, she thinks she can get this big get, but she is fascinated by the challenge of meeting this man where he's at and what she can maybe push him, like what she can get out of him. So I love that we're seeing a woman with true agency who is complicated, who's, maybe making questionable decisions about her own safety, but she has weighed the risks and deemed them acceptable.
Yeah, that I think is what is so unique, is that a lot of times in these classic final girl horror movies, even if it's something like, let's just say Fresh, where you think you're in one situation and you turn out to be in another very different situation. It's very rare that you get a killer staring the female protagonist in the face and saying, hey, what's up? I'm a serial killer. And her being like, okay, anyway, like, let's continue here. Truly. That is what I think sets the tension so well, because at no point did I believe that she didn't weigh the risks. She does, just enough, but she's also ambitious. But she's not a dumbass, is the thing. She believes that she can handle him. And, I mean, she can, is the thing. She's right.
And we get it in the very next scene, right? So we've got this moment in the hot tub where we maybe or probably do not get his backstory. She is reassured that he is okay, i.e. we're going to continue to get some good shit out of this. So she leaves to shower, and then we follow him. And there's this suggestion of malice. You know, we get the knife on the floor, and then he is piloting the camera. So then we're going in on the shower. And of course, it's horror movie conventions. We're expecting our psycho moment, and she's not there, and she gets him again with the jump scare.
And with tape all over her face, like she really goes in.
Yeah, and they just start growling at each other because I think they're finally realizing, okay, yeah, we are meeting on the same level at this point. Okay, so we kind of move into a new phase of the film where it feels like he is not trying to get her quite as much. Like, he still definitely tries for jump scares, and they never work, which I love. But we are playing things like hide and seek, ready or not, that kind of stuff. He's chasing after her with a knife, but it's playful. We see him chopping wood, so we kind of know what this means. We've already watched the tape where he killed original Erin with that axe, and it's, of course, above the fireplace back in the house.
Which, of course, she's like, oh, that's probably just like, you know, fake film stuff. Good short film, buddy.
Yeah, it's doctored, right? Like, people can do this. And then we move back into the house, and he's shooting pool, and this is where I think, to me, this is the thesis of the film from Erin's point of view, where he says he always warns his victims about what they're about to walk into, and it's almost like they want to die.
Which, that... like, he's just... is he telling himself that to make himself feel better, or is he just saying that because he feels like he has the power over these other people, where he's... I don't know, man. Like, why?
That it feels preordained. I also think it's like, you know, he's speaking directly to her in this scenario, even though he's talking about his victims. It's like, I don't think he's told anyone else that he's a serial killer.
Right. Yeah.
Well, not at least at the top of the meeting, like he does with Sarah.
Right. Yeah, because this is technically, I think, about the second time he's really said, no, this is what I do. I mean, apart from the backstory where he admits to killing a man, like, he watched the original tape with her and said, hey, this is what I do. And now he's saying again, well, all of these people, I've always let them know. And in a way, we're all sitting here screaming at the TV
like,
saying,
get away!
He's doing it with you, Sarah, right now. This is your moment. If you're going to leave, it should be right now.
Well, and I think actually, because this is also when when she brings up the 24-hour rule, and, you know, he'll say, I know about the knife in your boot. And what I love is that we don't get to see Sarah's reaction to any of this stuff. Like, so...
No.
It's the same thing again. Whenever he mentioned that he's a serial killer at the beginning, like we can hear her reaction and it feels very like level-headed and normal and calm, but we can't see her face like Aaron can. And so that's the thing is like when he says, "Oh, I know about the knife in your boot," I don't know. I feel like this is the first time Sara feels like she's been got, but I'm not sure because we can't see her reaction.
Yeah, that is true.
I do think you need a little bit of her, getting knocked around, being thrown off balance for us not to feel like, well, whatever, we know she's going to get away. It's fine. She totally has this guy wrapped around her finger.
Right.
So I liked that at this point of the movie, she does start to get a little unnerved. Whether or not it's for show is a question, but just for the tension, you're like, yeah, you should be unnerved.
Yeah.
That's good. That's progression.
Yeah, because we do get a couple of these moments, right? So we've got the confrontation wordplay about knowing about encounters, knowing about the knife. He refers to her as a deer when he comes up to her and she's washing the dishes. And it's like, okay, well, what do we do to deer? We hunt them, we gut them, we kill them, and so on. But it's still casual, right? Like he's still play acting when he says, "Where's mommy's juice? Bring me mommy's juice."
A deeply upsetting scene.
I
Made
hate
even
it.
more upsetting by the fact that it is Coppola wine, which is pretty bad if anyone's ever had it.
It's Coppola wine's fine. It's not my favorite.
Fine.
It's a go-to grocery store wine.
Yes.
Oh my God, that is too funny.
Listen, I brought it to every cinema party ever.
100%.
Because there's just nothing better than rolling up with Coppola wine.
Yeah, the labels are really pretty. He has
being
8 different varietals.
Hello,
it's good.
cinephiles. There's the Sophia Rosé. It's adorable.
Oh no, the Sophia Rosé that tastes like ass. I hate the Sophia Rosé.
This is too funny because not only did I not clock that when I was watching this movie, but I had no idea this was a real thing until you both were just like,
"Oh, they don't have Coppola wine in Canada?"
No.
Yeah, it's everywhere here. Like everywhere.
Yeah, I love it. Like it is every time I go to an Oscar party or anything where I'm like, yeah, me and a bunch of my film nerd friends, you have to show up with the Coppola wine because the bit is too good.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's been designed for those kinds of purposes.
Exactly.
Right?
But it's infinitely better than showing up with Casamigos or Terramana or whatever. It's like, no. You want to show up with the $10 bottle of filmmaker wine.
It's pretentious and cheap. I love it.
In many ways, Creep 2 is a movie about Mark Duplass trying to figure out how to make his megalopolis. It is. He's like, I need to reinvent myself. Coppola hasn't made an original movie since the 70s or whatever. And then you're like, oh yeah, except he did this year. Yeah.
It's wild. All of these references just immediately become outdated because of Megalopolis.
But it's great. This is a time capsule. If it wasn't clear from the stretchy choker necklace that Sara wears, of which I owned multiple,
so many,
then the Coppola references really timestamp this.
Even, I would say, the purple hair, which I appreciate serves a narrative function when we get to the end of the film and she no longer has it. But I will say, girls with a shock of purple hair feels like a quintessentially mid-2010s.
Even the sweatshirt and mini shorts combo that she's got going on with her hiking boots. It's great.
It's a final girl look, though. She's hot.
It's great.
We have not said it. She is hot.
She's super hot. This is a good underrated Halloween costume.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. I also think that, we haven't talked about it, but Desiree Akhavan is Persian. And I think that, between her and Karam Soni at the beginning of this movie, an element that's not present in the original film is, the added caution that she's going to take going to interact with all of these men as a woman of color, as someone. I'm Lebanese. I'm very interested in how kind of Middle Eastern adjacent people, particularly women, are coded as white passing or not white passing. I just think, that is an element of this that is not directly touched on, but I found was very present. It's that extra kind of steeliness, is that extra kind of I'm not going to even pretend to that you have me, Right. I'm not going to play innocent here. You need to know what you're up against.
I truly do feel like there's a savviness with this character. And I like that we get to juxtapose it against Dave in the opening, where we're like, okay, thank God it's not just a sea of whiteness. You know, not like there's a sea in a movie that has, 2 characters or 5 characters or anything. But still, it feels like a deliberate choice to say, okay, we had 0 people of color in the first film. Let's make sure we at least sneak in 1 or 2 in the sequel.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's very interesting to me. I think that's like an added layer of armor that is very cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we're at the point where he point blank asks her, "Do you believe I'm a serial killer?" And he wants an honest answer. And I love that her immediate answer is no, because his stories are ridiculous. And why would he confess all of these details that she could then just take to the police? It's like, yeah.
Valid questions, yeah.
And he says, and I think this is meant to maybe be a little bit of a twist or a reveal or something, when he says, oh, well, it's because I'm not going to kill you. You're going to kill me. Mm-hmm. And I will say, the first time I saw this film, I thought this was the subversion that we were going to head to, is that she was going to be revealed to either be a serial killer, a burgeoning serial killer, or he was going to... Okay, we haven't brought it up, but this is also a little bit the rise of Leslie Vernon. Brooke, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's very much a...
How so, Joe?
Just this idea that we're inviting someone to come and follow along and record as a serial killer goes about their business.
Yeah, okay, yeah. No, I can totally see that. Yeah. Oh, also, Brooke, you should seek out Leslie Vernon. Like, it's a really solid,
definitely think I should. Yeah. I just looked at the logline and I was like, yeah. I love meta horror, even if I watch it and I'm like, bad. Like, I love to explore meta horror because I'm just always interested in what they're gonna do.
Well, and one of the things that I like about Leslie Vernon is that it's jokey and winky and very self-aware and making meta commentary, but then at a certain point it does turn into a, hey, bitch, he's now going to come after you and you're going to have to decide what you're going to do. And I think at that point it does become a slightly more conventional horror film. But I had to wonder at this point in Creep 2 if that was the direction we were going to go. Like, at a certain point, these two will come to blows. And it was, do I think the film has been saying she's going to make it out or he's going to make it out? And I truly didn't know on a first watch. Like, Trace, do you remember? Did you think she was going to get out of this alive?
I don't think I did, if only because, like, I mean, I've seen the first movie, so... But I guess at the same time, it's like, yeah, but, like, Sarah's much more well-equipped for this than Aaron was. However, Aaron at least was suspicious, but just wouldn't fucking leave, whereas she is not suspicious of him. So it's like, oh, this could go either way.
Yeah. Brooke, what did you think?
I don't know. I'm sort of on the fence about it because it feels like, okay, this is the line that she's not going to cross.
Right.
And I think that she's smart to not cross it. I love the axe scene when he's like, I'm asking you to kill me. It's on camera.
It's so ridiculous.
But here's the thing, though. Do you think he is that confident that she won't be able to do it? Or do you think he actually is saying, well, you know what? If I die, I die.
If I die, I die. This is why I don't, please correct me if I somehow missed it, but I was like, he explains what's going on with the harness and hanging himself. But does he explain what's up with that axe?
No, he doesn't.
But again, though, I actually thought the harness stuff was fake. I thought that was a lie because I don't think he had a harness on when he fell off that thing.
Oh, no, he totally did.
He did? Okay.
Yeah. Because I don't think you could survive a fall like that.
Excuse me, we have both seen Stephen Sommers' The Mummy.
Trace, that like Brendan Fraser nearly died for real.
Yes, but the character survives. Because his neck did not break.
Sir, we are not taking real life examples from The Mummy.
Well, this is not a real life example. It's also a movie.
Clearly, he's ready to die. Because
I think he's pegged it as like this is his level of acceptable risk. Like he's pretty sure, but also if it goes wrong. I
mean, he stabs himself later. The real question is like, is him dying predicated on her also dying? Initially,
Right.
no. Later, yes? Question mark?
But that's
I'm
what
not
I'm saying, though.
sure.
I think his midlife crisis is real. I really do think
Okay.
I do think it's real because the more we talk about as we get to the ending and what he's doing, like I don't know, man. I don't know if he actually has this planned out or if he's kind of going on the fly.
I could buy it. I definitely could. I remember thinking the first time I watched it that I did take his midlife crisis at face value because he genuinely doesn't seem as passionate, at least from what we see of the murder of Dave at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But then he does seem increasingly excited and tantalized by the possibilities as he gets to know Sara. But I think he's also like, yeah, but this is who I am. In the same way that she is willing to take all these risks for her art, he is willing to do the same for his passion.
For his passion. Mileage may vary on this, but the first time I watch most movies that have some sort of like mystery thriller twist element, I don't try to figure it out. I basically take everything at face value because I trust that the movie will reveal itself in due time, or if that it doesn't, that there's a good reason. But it drives me as the viewer, like it makes me too anxious to try and figure out like who's telling the truth, who's lying here, whose side should I be on. I just kind of like let it all wash over me, absorb it, and then afterward go back, get analytical, like we're doing right now. So when I was watching this, I was taking his sort of like, yeah, I'm ready to die, yeah, this is my grand finale. I was like, okay if you say so. Let's see if he goes through with it. Yeah.
I'm imagining that your viewing experiences are so much more enjoyable than mine. I'm the person who's like, I'm trying to figure it out from moment one. Like, that second person who comes on screen, that's the killer because they were introduced second.
Yes. But sometimes you can tell though.
That's the thing, because Joe, you try to figure it out, but then you also, like, whenever you go see a new movie, you're always in this fucking same theater with the same, like, group of critics and not, like, normal people. And so I just feel like you never watch movies under, like, the optimal circumstances.
No, never the best circumstances. Brooke, I'm not to throw my fellow Toronto critics under the bus, but some of them are dead weight when it comes to, like, feeding off the energy of a crowd. They're just dispassionate, and I'm like, so I'm watching horror films, I'm watching mysteries, even things like sometimes comedies. I'm just like, are you all dead inside?
Right, they're
Why
too
is
cynical.
no one reacting?
I recently saw Conclave, and I was like, I want to see it so bad, like I had never seen a film before. Every time someone revealed something, I was like, oh my god.
Okay.
Because
I love that.
That's how I prefer.
I don't think there's anything wrong with react. I mean, I love a reactive audience, but like I went to go see an advanced screening of Heretic, and it was one with like general audiences. But there was a woman 2 seats down the row from us, and she was drunk, and but she was reacting, to borrow your phrase, Brooke, as if she'd never seen a horror movie before, and every 20 seconds, we were getting on, but then she would also start talking to herself, and I was like, okay, there is a limit. There's a limit.
To be clear, not that shit. Like, absolutely not. I keep my feelings mostly internal, but I like to free my mind as much as possible from the burden of having seen a million fucking movies.
For sure.
Knowing where you think it's going. But again, that's why Creep 2 is a movie about filmmaking made by a team of filmmakers. Like Duplass, Akhavan, and Bryce are all filmmakers.
Right.
Like, it's insular, and so I think it's very, very aware that a large sector of the audience, from horror fans to general film fans, are going to be watching with close eyes. And they want to play off of that.
Yeah. I think that's why this idea of how much can we take as truth from either of these two characters, I do think that's why this movie works as well as it does, because even if you think you've got it figured out, like, oh, okay, well, she's probably going to have to kill him in the end, or they're going to fight, or, oh, we mentioned an open grave, so that'll come back because it's a Chekhov's narrative device, it still maintains its sense of excitement because we're still questioning how much they know about each other and how much we as an audience know about them.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So all this to say, we continue this dance with murder me with the axe. No, you won't do that? Fine, I'll hang myself. Okay, this actually gets the rise out of her where she thinks, okay, it's gone too far. I do believe that something bad is going to happen and she wants to leave. And this is where he starts to try to turn it romantic, but I feel like it doesn't work? Because he comes on way too strong.
I mean, she seems to buy into it, though.
Does she?
Does she?
We can just keep asking it. I think that what struck me the most about the scene where she's putting on her boots, saying that she's going to leave, is that, to me, that seems to be Aaron's turning point between she can live and we have to die together.
Oh, but because he did something that was too much for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that...
Okay.
He was like willing to die, being like, she gets me. And now he's like, maybe she doesn't get me. We should probably kill her just to make sure. Yeah. But like, we'll do it romantically.
I think it's the way, as I said, I think Duplass's performance is so strong, but there's something that rings artificial and almost mocking when he says things like, I really like you. I'm just so interested in you. And I just like, that's not true to this character. Like it feels desperate and hammy.
But it works enough to get her in the woods with him.
Well, because he says something along the line, we're going to make the best episode of Encounters ever. So he brings it into her show now, not his goal.
Yeah.
Yes. But there is also the idea that, like, I think that, and I say this as a compliment, the character of Sara is a bit of a narcissist because she goes in here and she sort of fixes these men, or she affects their lives. And Encounters is not a show about some other person doing this and her interviewing them. It's about her. She's the center of her own narrative. So saying, I really like you, I'm really interested in you, might be hammy, but at the same time, he's kind of playing to what she wants to hear.
Well, and forgive me if we already read this quote, but he does tell her in this scene, like he says, I'm not a murderer, but I am a sociopathic, pathological liar. And so, again, this is, he's like trying to disarm her in some way. I again, maybe you're right, Joe, like a last-ditch effort to be like, no, please stay.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think you're both actually quite right. I'm loving this conversation because I feel like you're really forcing me to reevaluate the things that I felt very cemented in, and I'm becoming unmoored in the best possible sense.
We love to hear it.
The first movie really does cement you. You're like, I just watched a thing, and like, I understand what it was. This, I don't entirely understand what it is, and that's what makes it a good movie.
Yeah, that's why I'm coming around to your respective points of view, that this is not just the stronger film, but the more enjoyable film, because it is that escalation in complexity.
Yeah.
Because, this was often the part of the film that kind of lost me. I was just a little bit less interested because it felt a little bit more conventional. Like even the 2 truths and a lie, and then he reveals, I'm actually a virgin and I was institutionalized and all these things. And I'm just like, okay, what are we doing? It's just more lies all the time.
So, hey, question. Do y'all think, because she has to explain to him 2 truths and a lie, do you think this is the first time he's heard of this game before? And I'm asking that, I'm going to tell you why I'm asking that question. Because with the creep tapes, it's not clear when they take place. Like if they take place before, after, or like in the middle of creep 1 and 2. However, the first episode, I didn't catch this when I watched it until I rewatched Creep 2, and I was like, the first episode has a pretty major scene where he plays 2 truths and a lie with the subject of his tape, and he suggests doing it. He says, let's play 2 truths and a lie. So now I'm wondering if it's, so maybe Creep Tapes does take place after Creep 2, and that's the thing he took from Sara.
From her.
I like that interpretation as opposed to him already knowing what it is and playing dumb. Lying. I think it's more interesting if he's like, I'm going to incorporate that in the future.
Yeah. I like that. I can use that against other people for future victims and future murders.
Absolutely. So I only realized that as I was watching this, because I didn't think about it when I was watching the Creep Tapes. I was like, 2 truths and a lie, I know that game. But no, it's from this movie.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because I definitely was just assuming that this was all big fake facts, and he was just playing into whatever she wanted to hear. Because, it does work to a certain extent. She ends up kissing him at the end of this, and then you're right, Brooke. It's enough to not just get her to stay, but get her back out in the woods.
Yeah. I like the idea that if he's playing 2 truths and a lie, he'll actually include 2 truths. That seems like a safe space in which to do that, perhaps.
Right.
Because the topic becomes the lie, In 2 truths and a lie, you always end up usually talking about like whatever the most unbelievable thing is.
Yeah, because often the way that people play it is they'll try to come up with the most ridiculous things so that the lie becomes just another one of them. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Nevertheless, I'm really happy we get a Never Been Kissed reference in this movie because Never Been Kissed
but
rules.
not a 40-year-old virgin reference.
Right.
Well, because look, they're both good movies, but one of them is clearly the better movie.
Of course.
Yes. I think it's also more in keeping, like, 40-Year-Old Virgin, great movie, but it is very slapsticky, whereas I think the kind of gently saccharine-ness.
Yeah.
And even like the
sweetness.
YA-ness. Yeah, the sweetness.
Yeah.
It makes sense for this film because I think that there is a version of this film where nobody dies and the two of them end up together, either sexually or just as like murder buddies. I'm not suggesting it's the film we're watching.
No. I know. I was just thinking. I was like, honestly, I wouldn't discount any potential. Like, this is what could happen after this. Like, I wouldn't discount anything because, truthfully, like, I think that's the strength of this movie is that Bryce and co are so good at being like, yeah, this could be happening, or it's not. Like, it could be something else.
What do you think happens at the end? I don't know. Use your imagination. Okay, so in the dark outside, he does give her the necklace that he originally gave to Aaron in the first film. And then this is where we see the pre-dug grave. Hey, when did you dig that? Oh, before you arrived.
Cash.
Just digging a grave must be so exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta dig. You gotta dig like deep.
6 feet. Yeah, 6 feet.
Yes.
Okay, but here's the thing. I found out from doing a lot of true crime for my other podcasts that you actually don't need to dig very deep. You actually only need to go down a couple of feet. So the whole idea of 6 feet, we don't need to go that.
So, sorry, Joe, you might also know this then. So what is the supposed reason for burying them 6 feet under? Like, so like, what, if there's like, I don't know, you're below sea level, the water doesn't lift the bodies back up?
Isn't it for animals?
So it could be a little for animals. It could be, yes, like conditions to make sure that the corpse stays buried. It could also be because we put the bodies into coffins. So if you actually just threw a body into the dirt, you wouldn't need to dig as much because the coffin adds a ton of extra height.
Oh, yeah.
But apparently, depending on what region you were coming from, and I only know this because I think a listener from Poland wrote in to Jen and I and said that sometimes 6 feet under was so that you could also bury family members on top of you. So like, oh, Trace, you died and then Ari died after you. Well, we could just excavate the top 4 feet and put Ari on top of you.
The budget mausoleum.
Basically.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there you go. So they could both fit in this grave.
They could both fit in here quite easily.
And hey, it's nice that it's not that deep because somebody has to climb out of it.
Right. Yeah. And I love this. Like we've talked a little bit about the way that this movie is filmed, but so much of it is point of view shots where we're like, okay, so this is Sara handling the camera, and yes, that means we're not going to get her facial reactions, but there are these strategic moments where we put the camera down so we can have both Aaron and Sara in the frame, and that's what we do for our big kind of like chasey, stabby sequence here.
Which is quite well lit. It's very hard to do this. I felt that way about the hot tub scene too. I was like, this is actually very impressive.
Because it looks dark. Like we're getting a ring of light that could feasibly be just from the camera, but it is pitch black on the edges of the frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
gotta respect it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like in either found footage or like faux documentary, this kind of filmmaking. I like it where we have these moments where we say, I'm not going to carry the camera and I'm just going to use this as a static shot and have the actors create emotion.
Yes. Because when he does, like, you know, knock her out, like, cause she runs back and we see they're hidden by a tree and we can't tell who is stabbing who. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we hear stabbing, we hear groaning. We know that something bad's happening. We cut to black and then we come back and Aaron has left the camera on the grave and we see him dragging poor Sara's body into this. And I thought, I'm actually really disappointed in this moment because I wanted her to make it.
Yeah, I definitely on my first viewing, I was like, okay, so she's dead. I definitely thought she was dead.
They
here.
got me. They totally had me. Because I think at this point you're like, well, this isn't really one of those horror movies.
Right.
When someone comes back from the dead.
Right.
No, and also because most of us are watching it on fucking Netflix because this movie doesn't get a physical media release, we're able to immediately check and see, oh, there's like 2 minutes left in this movie. So there's not even enough time to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Psych, there is.
Psych.
Honestly, her crawling out of that grave, it's such a good moment for a viewer. Just be like, yes!
It's visually awesome. The timing, I think, is impressive.
It's so good.
Well, because it's also suspenseful, though, because you're waiting for him to turn around and catch her.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Just like the first film, it's an inversion.
I was going to say, it's a great callback, but this time you actually believe it because you're like, he is... Again, he's also a narcissist.
He is. He's totally a narcissist.
I assume, getting nerdy and behind the scenes, but I assume that there was a monitor mounted behind the camera so that both of the actors could see exactly where they were in frame.
It has to be.
Or Bryce from behind the camera is like, oh, I'll give you a hand signal when you're about to get smacked.
Yeah, because she just takes him out with the shovel, and it is very satisfying.
Oh,
it's so satisfying.
My favorite touch is actually his blood is on the camera lens.
Yes.
It's so good. But the movie's not over.
Not over.
Yeah, okay, so we cut to black again, and then we pick the action back up. And this is where I really think that the either bound footage or the faux documentary style, however we want to refer to it, I love how the quality changes, but it's evident enough that we can understand that she doesn't know she's being filmed. So we're back in New York. Her hair is no longer purple, so some time has passed, and it's just like crowd shots of her walking. But we realize, okay, so we're zooming in, and that's why it's a little bit grainy in some shots, or we're really far away. Other times we're tracking her, and we eventually end on the subway with her, and we use the telltale wolf whistle to alert her. Hey, we found you.
And as soon as she makes eye contact with the camera, it is cut to black. Movie is over. And so what do y'all think happens to, barring my tidbit about the creep tapes, what did you think happens to Sarah after this? Does she make it out alive?
I say yes.
I think yes.
I say yes.
I think he does this because he wants to finally get the scared reaction out of her. And I do think that we get it. It's not over the top, but it's a little fleeting, but it's still there. She looks spooked. And he finally got her on the train.
It's a public place, yes. I don't think he kills her here, but like the same thing happened to Aaron in Creep 1. You know, he left, he does make it home, and then he starts getting those gifts sent to him. And I don't know. I don't know.
Right. So
I want to believe she lives.
The beginning of like her tapes, basically.
Right,
I also want to believe that she lives, mostly because I want to see her get famous off of her incredible encounters
how fun
video.
Would that be?
But I don't dislike this ending. It is very like ambiguous.
Oh yeah.
But I think that it's kind of essential in that you want to be able to be like, he lived, he's not dead. Who else could possibly be following her? But like we said, that shovel smack is so satisfying that I'm a little selfish for being like, let's let her like go out on a high.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is more common now in horror movies than it used to be. It used to end so routinely with the final scare.
Yeah.
Right.
And now I feel like you look at like Ready or Not or Abigail, maybe this is just what Radio Silence likes to do, but like you're ending on kind of like a triumphant moment of like, you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got good for her, right? It's become a lot more popular. And I would argue that is
menu,
from around this time. It's like 2017, 2018 is when we really started to get a lot of, oh, you know, okay, maybe it's not the ending you expected for her, but damn if it doesn't satisfy.
Right. Like you have her walking away.
And not to bring this to the election, but like I actually feel like we started seeing a lot more of those films towards the end of Trump's initial presidency, because during his presidency, especially the beginning, we were getting a lot of it was a continuation of the A24 type horror films, you know?
Right.
And of course now A24 is going more commercial. So like I feel like there was a distinct lack of fun horror in the beginning of Trump's presidency and more of it towards the end or after it.
Yeah. when the party can actually begin because we can be happy and have hope again.
Yeah, so I actually do think that for the next couple of years, I think we'll be seeing fewer fun horror films. Or maybe I'm wrong. Who knows?
I don't know. I have heard that like elevated horror is still very hot, and that is still what people are looking for, and like message-driven horror. My counterpoint to that is like, why can't you have both? Just because a movie is fun doesn't mean that it doesn't have a message.
I think you could say the Smile movies are kind of like that.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
But I love horror with like real anger in it, and some good for her movies have it, some don't. The ones that don't usually bother me more. This I think is really interesting because you're like, she is unfuckwithable, but she's still a real character.
Well, I mean, we've tossed around the word performance and a little performative throughout the episode, but I don't think that this movie is just going through the motions. Like, we're not just subbing out a man for a female protagonist in the film. Like, we did clearly do a lot of collaborative work with our new actress so that we could flesh out Sarah as a character. But I don't leave this film saying, oh, well, it feels unsatisfying that she was able to get the better of him. And I don't know. I don't mind the ending. It does feel a little bit more conventional in the, well, how do we keep the door open so we can make something like the Creep tapes? But I'm also not unhappy about it because we got this great movie with two fantastic central performances, and hypothetically, both could come back.
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly how I feel about it.
It was so funny because I went to the IMDb page for Creep Tapes to see if they named the episodes yet, because the episode names are the person's name. Oh no, spoilers!
Right.
Well, no. But no, they're not named. They're not on there. So I don't know who the last three tapes are.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I do think we're going to see a lot of Easter eggs to these first two films, regardless of when the Creep tapes are set. I think they'll either be anticipating things, if they are in fact set in between, or they'll be paying homage to things from these first two films.
Well, because I'm trying to figure out, because they wanted to make a trilogy, and like we don't have Creep 3, so is the Creep tapes in lieu of Creep 3, or are we still going to get a Creep 3 after the Creep tapes? I don't know.
Listed as in development. Which could mean anything. Could mean it's dead. Could mean it's in production. Honestly.
Yeah. It could be we're looking at how everyone responds to the Creep tapes to decide whether we want to give these two money to make 3.
It's so goddamn cheap to make these movies, though.
Right?
They shot Creep 2 over the course of 6 days. Like, they can do it. They probably already have Creep 3 filmed.
That's the thing, right? I'm curious. I'm not to draw this out any longer than it needs to be, but do you think it's a little odd that the first two films end up on Netflix, but we're getting the Creep tapes on Shudder?
That is just
that's just
licensing hell that we live in.
Okay.
Let me tell you. I'm sure that one or both streamers have something in mind, but it could also be kind of like a partnership. Not officially, but like, oh, well, they're on Netflix, so people will find them and then sign up for AMC Plus.
I guess I was just to the point where, because Trace and I have had so many conversations about things like Friday the 13th and how it has to become Jason and not Friday the 13th, or how Child's Play becomes
licensing
Chucky.
hell.
Yeah. But I found it surprising then that we were able to still call it the Creep tapes as opposed to something like,
Aaron's tapes.
No, I think the easiest one, would have been Peachfuzz.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, okay, so because remember the original title for Creep was going to be Peachfuzz, so I wonder if that's also wrapped up in rights somehow too.
Possibly, yeah. Interesting.
Because they only changed it to Creep when they were like, people are going to be spending the whole movie waiting to figure out what Peachfuzz is, so we don't want to name it that.
Right.
Yeah. And Creep is so good because it's got that same sort of like discomfort to it. Just unsettlingness, like not necessarily...
But still funny.
Still funny. It's a funny word. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the only time I ever complain about Creep is when people then confuse it with the Franca Patente film.
Okay, I need to see that movie, because I only know is that the box art's on the subway and there's a hand in the subway glass, but I've heard it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. Well, okay, everyone. Well, that is Creep 2. Brooke, first, thank you so much for coming on to this.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
do you have any final thoughts before we close out?
Good movie, very innovative, very original, made me think in honestly a whole new way about killer final girl or protagonist antagonist dynamics.
Oh, okay.
I was so engaged by their relationship.
Yeah. This feels like it could also be like a play in some ways, and I love these dialogue-driven horror films. Like, we're essentially just watching people have conversations, you know? There aren't like yes, there are jump scares, but they're booing each other, but they're all like innocent, I guess. And so, maybe innocent, I don't know.
Wow.
So yeah, I found this relationship between Sara and Aaron just so captivating. And not to say that the one between Aaron and Aaron was not in the first one. They're just the shift in dynamic here I just find so much more interesting and innovative.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that they didn't just kind of rely on a formula, because the first one worked and it got good reviews, and they realized, it probably would have been very easy to just say, let's just have him do this exact same thing again. And instead of that, they challenged themselves and they brought in someone who was going to collaborate and make the material more interesting. And I think we get a very complimentary, but also different feeling sequel that can stand on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, before we announce what we're covering next week, Brooke, let everyone know, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me at Brooke B. Solomon. That goes for Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and you can listen to The Queer Quadrant on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. If you want to follow The Queer Quadrant on social media, we are at Queer Quadrant.
There you go.
There you go.
All right. Well, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram and Blue Sky at HorrorQueers, or shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we have covered. If you want to chat with other listeners, please join our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Also, we're getting a lot of comments on Spotify episodes now, so if you don't want to review us, go leave a comment.
It's kind of fun, right? It's a new thing.
I like it. But if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you will get 345 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Hannibal Season 1, Episode 11, Time Cut, Heretic, Smile 2, and a brand new audio commentary on A Silent Night, Deadly Night for its 40th anniversary.
Ooh, okay.
All right, Joe, what are we talking about next week for American Thanksgiving?
Yes. Well, funny that you should say that, because we're going to talk about one of only 2 female-directed films that we have left to talk about this year. So I'm excited to have that conversation. But also, I think we should get our hair did for the holiday, Trace. So terrible. So we're going to talk about the feature adaptation of a short we've already talked about, in 2020's The Stylist.
Yes, I still have not seen this movie. I've obviously seen the short. Everyone go listen to our micro queers on it. But I still haven't seen this, so I'm excited to check this out.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, until our hair appointment next week, we can cross out Creep 2.
Indeed. And cross out Horror Queers.